A show about mobsters and restaurants. Wow, that's really different for AMC, but is it really the show that they need? Well, hey guys, remember the series premiere of Feed the Beast, Season 1, Episode 1, Pilot Light, right off the bat, a very strange title. Let's talk about the show, though, because how was I really feeling about the show? I mean, I was looking forward to it, I will say that. You know, from the trailers, overall, I was looking forward to this show. I thought, okay, this is something different from AMC. I like they're trying something different here. Is it really the show for them? I didn't know, and then it was getting really mediocre reviews. People are just saying, oh, this show is not that great and things like that. And after watching this episode, you know, it took me a while to watch this first episode because I had other things to review and I knew that this episode wasn't that great. And I have to say, no, the show is not that great. I definitely will say that. I mean, there's even a strong chance, guys, that I might stop watching this show. I'm going to tell you that right now, that there really is a strong chance I might just stop watching this, mainly because there's not a lot in here that I really liked, and I'll talk about the things I like, but there's really not a lot in here that I did like. I mean, I think it's a show that could get better, but right now it's very mediocre, and it's really not that great at all. But let's just get into this first episode, because I do want to talk about overall. For me, I think the main problem with this episode, and I didn't see the second episode, but the first episode, for me, this was a way too overstuffed. They packed so much in this first episode, so much exposition, so many characters, and it's just really rushed, and only some of it works really well. Barely any of it really works in this episode, but I'll get to the stuff that does work. Let's just get into it, though, starting off with the first scene. So right away, things are very strange. We get to introduce to our character, Dion, and he's cooking, and he's in prison, and he's cooking for the guards, who all call him Chef, and thank him, and TJ then makes a cup of coffee for his dad, Tommy, who realizes how late he's running. He drives his son to school, offers to get art supplies after school, and TJ doesn't speak but smiles at his dad. Dion is thrilled that his lawyer got him out 8 months early, and she says that they'll talk parole terms after he gets charged, and right away, I'm like, why the fuck should I care? I mean, clearly he's in jail, but why do I really care? And Tommy drops TJ off at school with a worried look, and Dion is changing, finds his vial of coke in his stuff, and snorts some. Literally, you're out of jail, you're snorting coke. That's not what you do. I mean, it felt really unrealistic, and that was very underwhelming the way it was done. His lawyer comes to check on him. He says, let's celebrate, and starts pulling her clothes off, and already, you know, the first two things we've seen with Dion is that he cooks, he's in jail, he does cocaine, and he has sex with lawyers. So, already this guy's not off to a good track, you can definitely tell. But then we see Tommy. He shows up to a market, and Dion does his lawyer while she reads off his parole terms. His lawyer asks when she'll see him again, which, very, very weird scene. The way he's just having sex with her and she's reading off his parole terms. I mean, it just felt really bizarre. It really did. It just felt like they thought, alright, how can we make this scene as weird as possible? And that's exactly what they did. It was a very bizarre scene. I had no idea really what they were thinking, and already I'm like, this show is really weird, because really it is a very weird show, and I'll get into that, but basically, and it's not weird like Preacher. This is the bad kind of weird. I told you guys there's a good kind of weird and a bad kind of weird. And already I'm like, I'm not really feeling it here. I'm not really feeling like this is a good thing. And basically, his lawyer asks when she'll see him again. He says he's always in trouble so soon. And right away, I mean, why should I care about this character? If he's always in trouble and he's always doing terrible things, why should we really latch on him? Right away, that sounds like a line that just kills his character and kills my investment in this character. So Tommy then goes to pick up some peonies while Dion walks out of the jail. He sees a black van that looks shady and is worried. A trash truck comes between them, and then he's gone, and the van stops the trash truck and tells them to dump the load in the street, and when they see it's Patrick Wojcik, they do, but Dion isn't there. He went down to a sewer, and Tommy takes the pink flowers to his wife's grave. Probably one of the best parts of this episode was finding what happened to Tommy's wife. Very good stuff there. I really did enjoy that. Tommy is then tasting wine with a guy. He's selling wine, and I will tell you, anytime that Tommy's on screen this episode, I really was enjoying this episode. But anytime he's not on screen, I'm not really enjoying the show. I'll give you guys a perfect example of that. We see Tommy's tasting wine with the guy, he's selling wine. The guy asks how TJ is doing, and he says never better. And the TJ tells TJ to stop drawing and do his work, and another kid grabs his notebook after class, and TJ shoves him. obviously because TJ really likes art, and this is something that really does matter to him. And the kids try to make him talk, but TJ just pushes him back and walks away. Dion comes to his uncle Stavros, who greets him warmly. Stavros says he smells like a sewer. He gives him a fake passport and spending money plus a plane ticket to leave the country. Dion asks if he can stay, and Stavros says all the girls' and rooms are booked. They see the black van, the surveillance screen, and Patrick asks Stavros where Dion is, and he says he's still in jail. Stavros bickers with him. Patrick pulls out a pair of pliers as if he knows why they call him the Tooth Fairy, which right away I'm like, why would you call yourself the Tooth Fairy? When was that ever something that made you intimidating? I mean, I'll give you guys an example. Yes, Hannibal, they called Francis's character the Tooth Fairy. They did call him that. That was what the public called him. The public called him the Tooth Fairy. He never referred to himself as the Tooth Fairy. The public gave him that name just because of the way he killed. That's why he had the name the Tooth Fairy. This guy literally wants you to call him the Tooth Fairy, and he's a mob boss. What mob boss wants to be called a name like that? I mean, can you not be more of a pussy? Honestly, you're a mob boss. This is not at all make you seem tough. It makes you seem really like a wuss, honestly, and because that, I really had a hard time taking this character seriously, I gotta say. Patrick's character, I really had a hard time taking him seriously here. Patrick's lackey reports that he's not there. Patrick breaks one of the lottery machines, and Tommy then, and right away, I mean, like I said, just something seems really off about this show, really was not into it, and unfortunately, it doesn't really get better from here on out. So Tommy then sits drinking outside the school. The counselor asks him to come inside. He explains his insurance is maxed out for therapy sessions, and she says that his son doesn't talk and is failing and getting in fights. Now, I will admit, the teacher here was so over the top and so unbelievably just passionate of what she was talking about that I honestly did start to laugh in her scene. But because of character of Tommy and how much I cared about him, I really did enjoy it overall, and I'll talk about why. But basically, she says she knows that he has a drinking problem. He says he's a wine rep, but she threatens to call protective services on him, and it's like, you are a teacher. Why would you do that? Like, just because he drinks a little bit, it's really not your concern what he does. It's not, and says that he might lose his son. Tommy tells TJ he won't let anyone take him away. TJ stares at birds flying by like the ones he was sketching earlier, and Dion then shows up to his lawyer's place, asks him to come inside. He says he's a great lay, but they need to keep this professional. She won't let him in. Dion goes to lurk outside Tommy's place, and he asks if he's going to crash her. Dion says for one night. Dion says he's got to get away, but he will be back. Tommy asks if he was in the one prison without a weight room, and Dion asks if he's okay. He gives TJ a hug, but he doesn't look really happy about it, even though, he's trying to bond with him. TJ clearly is not really a fan of Dion, and they head inside, and right away I'm just thinking, why are these two friends? I mean, they seem so different, and they just don't really seem like friends to me. Tommy is, really responsible. He clearly is drinking, but his wife died, and that's kind of the effect that he has, while Dion is in all this lawyer trouble. I don't really understand why these two are friends, and I don't really think this episode really sells the fact that Dion and Tommy are friends. They don't really do that well, I have to say. I mean, they talk about how the Bronx neighborhood is changing. He asks if TJ's alright. Tommy says he hasn't spoken since she died, and again, you feel bad for Tommy because you can understand really what's going on. You can understand what he's going through. His life hasn't been the same since his wife died. Obviously, she meant a lot to him. He really, loved his wife dearly, and now that she's left, it's really created this void in his life, and he can't really get that void back. His son stopped talking, things like that. Very sad to think about. I really did feel bad for him, and I have to say that was by far the strongest of this episode, is finding out what happened to his wife. So Dion says he has a 20K stove, but his fridge is empty, then asks how his drinking is going. Tommy asks how his blow habit is, and Tommy makes a crack about him missing out on the funeral, says when he needed him because his wife died, he got coked up, burned down the restaurant, they worked at it, so he lost everything, and TJ comes in, and Dion offers to cook for him, and they watch him make homemade pasta. Very weird scene. I hated that they just randomly start cooking in this episode. I get that that's their passion, but why are you just randomly cooking in the middle of a conversation? It just felt really weird, and at times it feels more like the show is trying to advertise food to you while you're, instead of just actually being a show. I mean, I will definitely admit that. In fact, I'm eating chips right now because just thinking about the show, it made me hungry. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. This show makes you very hungry. This is not a show you watch without eating, because constantly there are so many food references, and TJ seems interested, comes to watch, then he shows the boy how to make TJ, how to make it. TJ sniffs the food, and then Dion tells Tommy the kid can't eat until he does it. Tommy groans and stands and explains the dish and the wine selection. Dion says he's back, and Tommy asks why they can't just eat, and they dig into the food, but Tommy hits the wine. Dion says he's out of practice, but Tommy says it was perfectly mediocre, which honestly describes this show. Honestly, Tommy saying that pretty much described this show. He says he wants to do Greek, then asks Tommy to come to Paris with him. Tommy says he's out of his mind, but Dion says the two of them and TJ could have a great life. Tommy says he can't uproot his son, and Dion says maybe a fresh start would be good for him, and Dion says he can't survive without him, but Tommy says that you always survive. And again, I just don't really get why these two are even friends, because it just seems like they're completely different. I mean, clearly Tommy knows that Dion is damaged, and yes, Dion and Tommy have been friends for a while, but why are they really friends? I don't really know. They just don't really seem like friends to me. It seems more like Dion is a brother of Tommy. It doesn't really feel like they're friends. I mean, if anything, they feel like brothers, and I feel like they should have been, honestly. I feel like you should have made these two brothers. It seems like that's where they were headed. That's not what they did, though. I feel like they should have made them brothers. I think it would have been more interesting, and they didn't do that. So Dion describes a perfect Greek meal. Tommy can see it on the plate that Dion is holding. Tommy reminds him how he helped come up with that menu, and Dion says that everyone was in prison, was thinking about escape, and he was thinking about the restaurants. And they talk about their plans with Rye, who is Tommy's late wife, and Dion pulls out their planning book. Theorio is the name for Thomas, Rye, and Dion, which, that name is so stupid, honestly. Theorio, I think, is so dumb that that's the name of the restaurant. Who's gonna want to go to Theorio's? I've never heard of a restaurant like that before, but it's a mix of their names, which is basically, I think, the cheapest name they could come up with. To me, it seemed like, okay, we can't come up with a name, let's just ship all their names together and make that a restaurant, because totally that's a restaurant name, which it's really not at all, you definitely see. But again, very weird. I just didn't really feel that these two are friends at all. Again, it's just, things were very awkward at this point, and like I said, unfortunately, it just doesn't really get better from here. Things, in fact, actually get progressively worse as the episode goes on. So then we're introduced to Aiden Moran, who is Tommy's dad. He's shown talking about how the Bronx is changing and going to shit, and Tommy wakes up hungover. Dion wakes and does some coke. Tommy tells him he can hang until his flight, and he leaves with TJ to go to school. Dion looks around the place. They see a cracked cell phone. It was Rye's, and we see a flashback to Dion and Rye working the kitchen together. Tommy was the sommelier, which is, of course, you know, wine tasting, things like that at the restaurant. You know, he makes wine, and his wife worked with Dion in the kitchen, and yeah, you do understand why these three bonded, but the problem is I just honestly don't really care about Dion's character. I don't really see why he would bond so well with them. I just don't really see it. So, we see Patrick in the restaurant eating. Now Dion puts the phone down. Tommy goes to a grief group meeting after dropping TJ at school, and Pilar then introduces herself to him and says her husband Oscar died in her arms. He says his wife died in a car wreck, and I do not like this girl, I gotta say. She is way too overbearing. It is way too obvious she's gonna become a love interest, and it is way too early for them to even think about giving Tommy a love interest. I mean, the fact that he has this drinking problem and can't get over his wife's death, I mean, there is really no room for a love interest right now. I have no idea what they're thinking of giving him a love interest already, but she asks what he does. He says, one day at a time. She says, your job. He says he's a sommelier between restaurants, so he reps wines. And she says her sister owns a restaurant in Harlem, and she's a manager. And just the fact that they bonded over this, she says they're always looking for wine, says, give me your number. Remember, this is the first conversation they ever had. I mean, just in this brief few seconds by meeting her, oh yeah, my sister has a restaurant. Why don't you give me your number? It just felt so weird the way that was done. I get that the girl's weird, but I just don't like it. Again, it's a very awkward kind of weird, and it's not a good kind of weird. As the meeting starts, Tommy talks about how he thinks his wife will walk in the door, but she won't. The grief counselor wants to do role-playing and asks Pilar to play Rye so Tommy can tell her how he's feeling. Tommy says he misses her all day long, and I gotta say, David Schwimmer really did sell it in this scene. He did a great job here, and really, I think, did a great job not making the scene utter shit, because Pilar, wow, was she bad here. I mean, she was laughing. She was just so awkward in this scene. Tommy says they were supposed to do together to raise a son, start a restaurant. He cries, says he needs her. They need her, and Pilar looks deeply affected. And Tommy says that Rye is like a phantom limb, then says, I love you, and it's really sad. I mean, you can really tell that he just can't really go on without her, but that really, like I said, I think is the strongest stuff here, is that you realize why he needs her. You know, he doesn't have that boy in his life, he misses her like crazy, and he just can't really go on with his life because of it. So Dion packs to leave, finds Patrick waiting from outside. He steps in the van since he can't avoid it, and Dion is grabbed, searched, and the henchman hands Patrick his cash ticket and passport. Patrick says the travel is good for his soul, then mocks the fake name Finkelberg on the passport. Again, I just can't take this guy seriously. I'm sorry, he is way too corny, and Patrick says he burned down the restaurant and then got caught. Patrick says that meant no insurance, burns the passport. He says Dion owes him $600K. He says he was just going to Paris on a sourcing trip for the new restaurant. Dion says, come on and I'll show you. He takes him inside, says they're still setting up. He shows them the espresso machine and stove, and he shows them the setup area and where prep and cooking will go. He says they're looking at cypress pillars for the dining room and are putting an herb garden on the roof. Patrick looks around. Dion says he's the one who made him the executive chef and says he can pay him back, plus he'll be eating well and can launder money through there, and basically realize the only reason they're making this restaurant is so he can pay off a mobster. I mean, what kind of bullshit is that? Seriously, this show made it seem like this was Dion's passion, that this is what Dion really wanted to do. But no, Dion is only doing this to pay off a mobster, which is the dumbest thing I think this show could have done, honestly. And I'll talk about ways that the show could have been much better at the end of this review. But Dion says that people will come. Patrick says okay, but then says if he skips town again, Tommy, his TJ, his uncle, and Laura, they're all gonna die. And again, I'm not intimidated by this guy whatsoever. I find him very cartoony. I find him something out of like a comic book. I mean, I don't find him really scary at all. I find him, honestly, really silly and not at all the right villain for this show. I just don't really like him. Patrick says he'll leave Dion alive so he can be miserable. He says he hopes the restaurant's a success because he'd hate to have gotten him out of prison early just to kill the people he cares about. And why did he get him out of prison? I don't really understand it. Because he owned him alone? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. So why did he just randomly get him out of prison? Patrick's going to yank one out of his teeth, but instead jacks up his finger, and we don't even see it. We don't even see him cut off his finger. And that's what makes this scene just feel so backwards. It's like the show is trying to be violent, but that is like the least bit of pain you could really go through. I mean, chopping off someone's finger, wow, that's so scary. Wow, that's so risky. I have seen so much worse on TV shows and gangster shows. Borg Empire, for example. This show just doesn't really want to take risks, and that's a big example, and that's a big reason why the show isn't as good as it is, I think. So Tommy waits on TJ, who doesn't come out of the school. Tommy finds him putting a sketch on the shrine where his mother died, and Dion goes to see Manny at the butcher shop, asks him to do him a solid. Manny nods. Manny comes back out, hands him a packet. He hugs him, then takes it off, and Dion then goes back to Tommy's place. He sets down the parcel. Inside is a hunk of meat, and Tommy asks why he's not in Paris, because that's, of course, where he was planning on going, and Dion says that this is why. He starts cooking. TJ comes in to watch him cook. Tommy keeps guzzling wine, and Dion sets a plate down in front of them. Tommy takes a bite, says it's astonishing, may even be perfect. Dion says it's never perfect. Tommy tells TJ to try it. Dion says that's the signature dish of Thurio. He says they're going to do this and make their dream happen, but again, you know he's only doing this to pay off the mobster, and it's so stupid. I don't like it whatsoever, and Tommy asks, and even if it's not that, it comes across that way. And Tommy asks if he has homework. TJ nods. He takes the plate and goes. Tommy tells Dion he won't open it without Rye, and that was their plan. You know, him, Rye, and Dion, they were going to do this together, and they actually start arguing. And again, it feels way too rushed for this episode. The problem is, I don't even believe these two are friends, so where they're fighting, it has literally no impact on me whatsoever. They're fighting. Tommy chews Dion out, says he has no idea what he's going through, and he said he had to clean out her closets, and honestly, Tommy's not wrong here. That Dion has no idea what it's like to lose someone like Rye. Clean out her stuff from the bathroom. He says, don't tell me how to grieve or to open a restaurant without her, and it's really a great scene. Like I said, David Schwimmer just really sold it here. You totally do understand it, but again, I don't really feel like he was talking to Dion like a friend. It was more like a colleague, and Dion says they're doing it with her. She will live through the restaurant. Tommy says that she won't. He goes upstairs annoyed, and obviously, things are not going well for Tommy. You can definitely tell how damaged she is. You can tell what's going on with them. I definitely really like the way that was done. Really good stuff there. So Tommy then tells TJ he loves him more than anything. TJ nods. Tommy hears Dion screaming, comes down and finds him unhooking the espresso machine. This only seemed like this happened to create drama because we know obviously they're going to open the restaurant. The show's called Feed the Beast. We know they're going to open it. He says he doesn't deserve it if he won't open the restaurant. Dion starts throwing plates. Tommy yells at him and they fight. Dion says he's just too much of a drunk to want the dream. They argue loudly and bicker. TJ grabs up his phone, calls his mother's phone. They stop arguing. Now, why are you calling your mother's phone if you know she's dead? Tommy says he's calling to hear Rye's voice on her voicemail, and I mean, really sweet, honestly. It definitely was sweet because, again, he can't really go on without her. He needs to just hear her voice because even though she's not alive, he needs to kind of make it seem like she's alive. This is the only thing he has left of her is this voicemail, and really, like I said, that scene really did work because of David Schwimmer's delivery, and I'll get into that. But basically, Dion asks why he will make him live like this and says this place is a tomb of Rye's dreams, says burn it down or build it up. Dion says this is not about Tommy but his son. Dion says he needs a purpose, and when he's back, TJ will turn around, and I mean, he already has a purpose. He makes wine, and Tommy asks where they'll get the money. Dion says he knows. Tommy says he hasn't talked to him in 10 years, and Tommy drives to his dad's house, sees Aiden being wheeled out of his chair. Dion's outside smoking when he sees the restaurant sign light up. He smiles. The detective who was watching Dion earlier is the same guy who put Patrick's dad, Ziggy, away, and I don't give a shit, honestly. I don't give a fuck that is what's going on here. I don't care about Patrick. I don't give a shit about him. I don't care about his past. I mean, I just don't care. And he threatens Dion, then shows him Patrick, a.k.a. the Tooth Fairy, took one of his teeth, and he says he's Ahab, and Patrick is his white whale, and Dion will help him nail him. So, Dion, yes, I like that he's conflicted, but I just don't really care. I just really don't. I mean, just the fact that he's doing this to help a mobster, it's stupid. Tommy shows up, tells Dion that his dad wasn't home. Tommy asks if he's sure we can do this. The sign is flickered out. They look around the box at the police cars driving by and some hobos. They laugh about a restaurant in the Bronx and living the dream, and that's how this episode ends. It comes to a very bizarre end. This episode in general was very bizarre, but let's get more into the show because I do want to talk about things I like. While there's not many, there are things I like, and I do definitely want to get into that. Like I said, things I like are very limited in this show. I mean, there are not many things that I really do like here. Really, I think the star of the show, without a doubt, and the thing that makes the show as good as it is David Schwimmer. David Schwimmer is incredible. I already knew David Schwimmer was incredible, though. You want to see some great David Schwimmer, watch American Crime Story. He's incredible in that. But his character here, Tommy, is really good, honestly. I like what they did with this character. I like that he's going through losing his wife and how he needs to hear her voice. He can't really go on with his life. It's really compelling where they're going with it. But most of it is because of how good David Schwimmer is as an actor. Because if David Schwimmer wasn't playing this role, I don't think it would be good at all. I think, honestly, David Schwimmer, that's the thing that makes it so good, is that he just sells in every scene. He's giving it 110% every single time. And he really does an incredible job in those scenes. But literally, other than that, I don't give a shit about anything else on this show. Jim Sturgis, I don't even care. I don't care about Dion, I gotta say. Dion, for me, is a very unlikable character. I mean, he's just causing problems, we can tell. He's causing problems, he's making terrible decisions, and he's the worst kind of anti-hero. There are two kinds of anti-heroes, in my opinion. There's the anti-hero that does terrible things, and yeah, they might not always do the right thing, but they have morality behind it. Dion does things just to do things. It feels like they only did this with Dion to stir up trouble. And again, I don't really get why he and Tommy are ever friends. I don't see the chemistry between these two at all. You know, Jim Sturgis is just, I think he's really hamming it up here. Definitely, I think a lot of his scenes with him, I want to build this restaurant. Oh my God. It just felt so fake, honestly. And it's because of David Schwimmer's so subtle delivery that everything else that Jim Sturgis did, it felt so fake. And any scene with those two, Jim Sturgis just ruined the scene because I did not think he was that great. Jim Sturgis is a good actor. He was great in Across the Universe. He just really is not that great yet. Lorenza Izzo as Pilar is terrible. I really am not a fan of her character. You can already tell that her and Tommy, they're going to get together. I'm not looking forward to that at all. The other characters I don't even like. John Doman as Aiden. You know, TJ's fine, but like Patrick, I don't give a shit about Patrick's character. There's nothing you can do to make me care about Patrick's character. I think he's, I think he's cliche. I think he's over the top. I think he is a cartoon, and everything about him is just ridiculous. I really am not a fan of Patrick's character whatsoever. As far as the writing goes to the show, guys, it's very, very predictable. I could see where everything was going from the way this episode started. I'm like, all right, Dion's going to do this. He's going to get himself into this trouble. This is what's going to happen. I expected this episode to go the way it did. It didn't do anything different for me. My biggest thing with this show is that it's not bad. It's not a bad show. It's just very, very mediocre and could be a lot better. It's holding back. Clearly, it's holding back. And I don't know why, but it is. It's holding back. And it's way too focused on creating drama and not really focused on what it should be, which is Tommy's wife. That is the most interesting stuff going on right now. And the fact that I don't care about our main character is a problem. I don't give a shit about Dion. I care about Tommy, and that's the reason I'm going to be watching this. But like I said, if they can't turn me around in the show, I'm probably going to drop out after 3 episodes. Give me 3 episodes, that's what I'm going to do. But I don't know, guys. Honestly, I'm gonna watch episode 2. I'm gonna see how it is, but I don't really know if I'm gonna stick with this show. I can't really see myself watching it past a couple episodes. Maybe it's gonna get better. I'm not really sure. I don't really know if this show is gonna get better. I'm hoping it does, because there are a lot of things that there aren't many things that work in the show, but the things that work incredibly well. Like David Schwimmer's delivery, like I said, it works incredibly well, and his whole conflict is so well done. Everything else is just not really that great. I'm really not a fan of it right now. I don't really care about the story right now. I don't really care about them opening this restaurant. But overall, guys, how much you guys saw this episode? Really bizarre premiere, in my opinion. Really not a fan of it. I am gonna watch episode 2. Not really saying I'm looking forward to it. I love the intro. That's another thing I like, is the intro that I had in the beginning of this video. I think the intro is really great. But other than that, everything about the show is just really mediocre. It feels very off, and the tone also didn't really go well. One of the reasons I hate Pilar so much is because everyone else taking the show so seriously, and she seems like she's having, she's bringing light to the show, and it doesn't really work at all. Also, why was this episode called Pilot Lights? I don't understand that. I think it's really weird. But overall, guys, how much you guys saw this episode? Love to hear your thoughts on it. Are you looking forward to the show overall? I really not that much of a fan of it, especially after something like Preacher. Why would you premiere this after Preacher? I mean, it's just so misleading that, we're gonna have the show Feed the Beast, and it's a show about a restaurant. I mean, it's so backwards from what AMC is used to doing, which is usually good in their favor. They do a very good job with just dialogue-driven shows, but this show isn't really that great so far. I'm hoping it gets better. I'm gonna watch episode 2, which I did hear is better, but I don't really know how much better that is, and I will see you guys for that. Again, let me know what you guys saw this show, and I will see you guys next video. Okay, bye.